So we've been on a journey these last few months, establishing our church's values based on the New Testament church's values as modelled in the book of Acts. And we followed, at different points, we followed the 12 disciples, we followed Peter and John, we followed Philip, and then finally of recent we've been following the Apostle Paul. And Paul, in his pursuit of excellence, he parted company with Barnabas, and he recruits a brother named Silas to join him on his next mission trip. And while they're on this trip, he recruits another disciple who's named Timothy, who joins the group. And this is the same Timothy to whom Paul would later address the New Testament letters, 1st and 2nd Timothy. And so while Paul is in Greece, he meets some acquaintances along the way, including Luke. And Luke is the author of Acts of the Apostles. And we see that that Luke joins Paul for some of his missionary trips. And you can always tell when Luke has joined the dream team, because the narrative changes from describing he did this, they went there, he went there, and then it changes and he'll start saying, we did this happened to us, we did that. And so we're going to rejoin the story in Acts chapter 20. And I will read in your hearing, and I'll be reading from the New Revised Standard Version. And so reading from Acts chapter 20 and reading verses 2 through to verse 6, and it reads as follows. When he had gone through those regions and had given the believers much encouragement, he came to Greece, where he stayed for 3 months. He was about to set sail for Syria when a plot was made against him by the Jews, and so he decided to return through Macedonia. He was accompanied by Sopater, son of Pyrrhus, from Berea, by Aristarchus and Secundus from Thessalonica, by Gaius from Derbe, and by Timothy, as well as Tychicus and Trophimus from Asia. They went ahead and were waiting for us in Troas. But we sailed from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread. And in 5 days we joined them in Troas, where we stayed for 7 days. So the group that Paul is traveling on this mission with, they go ahead of him onto the Greek city of Troas, but Luke, Paul, and presumably Silas, they stay back in the city of Philippi. This is the city named for Alexander the Great's father Philip. This is the city where the house church, who Paul would write the letter of the Philippians to, this is the city that they were based in. And so Luke tells us in verse 6 that they sailed from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread. Now, the festival of unleavened bread was the biggest festival within the Jewish calendar. It dated back thousands of years earlier to when the Israelites, who were the forefathers of the Jewish nation, to when they escaped from Egypt. And this nation of people had been held in bondage for 400 years, and in an act of divine power, God had set them free. So you see, Pharaoh, who was the king of Egypt, in a power play really against God, he had executed all of the Israelite baby boys. This is a truly monstrous and barbaric act. He executed all of the Israelite baby boys. And so subsequently, God had declared that there would be a retributive strike. But, and crucially there was a but, nobody had to die. You see, God instituted a test of faith. He had said every firstborn male, whether they are Israelite or Egyptian, is at risk of death. But there is a huge get-out clause. If they or their families take a lamb, an animal, a literal lamb, a young sheep, if they or their families take a lamb, they can use it as a substitute in place of the firstborn males. This will be like if the bank sent you a letter saying that your house is due to be repossessed for non-payment of your mortgage, but we're willing to take your child's dollhouse instead. I mean, it would be a little bit inconvenient, but it's infinitely better than the alternative. And so God had said, any family, regardless of ethnicity or heritage, any family that accepts these terms, they simply need to kill and cook this lamb and then take a little bit of the blood and dab it on your doorpost. And then I will know that you're accepting the terms of this deal, that you're signing the contract. And anyone who doesn't do this will face the painful consequences. But for those who accept the deal, the judgment will pass over your homes. You will be spared. And after you've dabbed the doorpost and you've cooked and eaten the lamb, you're going to walk out of this country as free people. And every year, to commemorate your freedom, you're going to celebrate with a festival day called Passover, because the judgment passed over you. And that's not all. Passover Day simply kicks off the celebrations. After the Passover Day, there'll be a week-long festival called the Feast of Unleavened Bread. You see, when God gave instructions to cook the Passover lamb, he also gave instructions to make some bread to go with it. But because time was an issue for the people, they needed to hurry. So God had said, don't put any yeast in the bread. We don't have time for it to rise. This isn't Great British Bake Off. This is just a quick flatbread situation. And so yeast is also known as leaven. And so the bread that they made was known as unleavened bread. So God told the people, in the future, when you are celebrating, you'll have a Passover feast where you will eat the Passover lamb as a symbol of how I saved you. And then the following day will commence the 7-day festival of unleavened bread. And this is the festival that Paul stops in Philippi for. Of all of the festivals in the Jewish calendar, and there were many, including the Sabbath, of all of the festivals, this was the biggest. And the Passover was actually the festival that had the most religious and theological meaning. You see, the lamb which they would kill and they would eat was actually a symbol. It represented deliverance for the Jewish people. They could say that because this lamb died, our ancestors didn't have to die. The lamb was a substitute for their lives. But what the Israelites weren't aware of at the first Passover was that the lamb which saved their lives from death was a metaphor for someone else who saves their lives from sin. And that Jesus, through his death on the cross, he was the ultimate Passover lamb. Because he, as the Son of God, experienced death, we don't have to experience eternal death. And the Passover lamb was to Jesus' crucifixion what school sports day is to the Olympics. So this is like the small version to help you to learn and understand and get to grips with everything and see how things work. And then this is the real thing, the ultimate, the pinnacle. And once you can win at the Olympics, you no longer need to go to Barley Lane Primary School Sports Day anymore. This is now irrelevant. It served its purpose. It doesn't carry the same meaning. And so as the Apostle Paul stays back in the city of Philippi for the festival of Passover and the festival of unleavened bread, he knows better than anybody else that they don't need the religious essence of Passover anymore. Because Sports Day has now been supplanted by the Olympics. The Passover lamb, that was good as a symbol before, but now we have Jesus, so we don't need that symbol anymore. In fact, Paul would even write in his letter to the Corinthian church that we know as 1 Corinthians, he would say, "Clean out the old yeast so that you may be a new batch, as you really are unleavened. For our Paschal lamb," that means Passover lamb, "for our Paschal lamb, Christ, has been sacrificed." The religiosity of this festival has been displaced. That lamb didn't save us. Jesus saved us. So now it would actually be slightly misleading for us to keep thinking that the blood of any animal has anything to do with saving us. So the question that we have to ask of the Apostle Paul, the first Christian theologian, is why has he stayed back in Philippi to participate in Passover when the rest of his dream team has carried on the mission and continued on to Troas? I believe the answer would be because it's a festival, and festivals are fun. We are seeing the Apostle Paul value fun. Festivals are the ultimate social gatherings. I mean, we get to see people that we haven't seen for a long time, and we get to share and catch up, and we get to hang out and laugh and joke and eat and eat and eat. Who doesn't want to do that? Paul seemingly understands that this festival no longer has religious applications, but it still has cultural capital. This is the fun event that people are stopping to participate in, that everybody is coming together for. Does it still have religious application? Not really. But is it fun? Yes. There was a time in Israel's history, some 700 years earlier, when a king named Hezekiah was on the throne. And Hezekiah was one of the good kings in Israel's history. And we read in the Old Testament, which is the first portion of the Bible, in a book called 2 Chronicles, and in chapter 30, we read that the people, that the whole nation, had come together to celebrate the annual festival of unleavened bread for 7 days with great gladness. And we read that the Levites played music every day, and they ate festival food every day, and they gave thanks to God every day. And at the end of the 7 days, the whole assembly, all of the people unanimously decided, this was so much fun, let's do another 7 days. And on an impromptu basis, the whole nation decides, let's celebrate this festival for another 7 days. And Hezekiah, he gives them thousands of sheep and bulls for offerings and for feasting. That's how much fun these festivals were designed to be, that you're enjoying them so much you don't want them to end. And who was the architect of festivals? God. Entrenched within the law that God gave his people just after setting them free from Egypt were laws inaugurating festivals. There's the Festival of First Fruits, Festival of Ingathering, Festival of Trumpets, Festival of Pentecost. The list just goes on. God instituted these festivals. Now, Hezekiah's festival was 14 days long, and including the Passover festival the day before, that's 15 days. So now let's do some quick maths, and you can hold up your fingers with answers, or you can type in the chat box, or you're even given permission just for a minute to unmute yourself. If you have answers, you can shout out. We're going to do some quick maths. Hezekiah's festival is 15 days long. In any given 15-day period, 15 consecutive days, what is the minimum amount of Sabbaths that can occur?
1.
Incorrect. 2. Okay, I heard 2. That's correct. 2. 2 is the minimum amount of Sabbaths that can occur in any 15-day period. What is the maximum amount of Sabbaths that can occur in a 15-day period?
Is it still 2?
No, I've got to take more takers, but thank you for answering.
3. It's 3.
3, that's correct. So we got the answers. So 2 is the minimum amount and 3 is the maximum amount. If Sabbath happens to be the day of the Passover, which is day 1, 7 days from that, the next Sabbath, day 8, 7 days from that, the next Sabbath, 15. What I want you to understand, God's people had to be celebrating the festival on the Sabbath and celebrating the Sabbath during the festivals. In fact, When God first begins to explain to his people the concept of festivals, he starts by saying this. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, these are the appointed festivals of the Lord that you shall proclaim as holy convocations, my appointed festivals. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of complete rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work. It is a Sabbath to the Lord throughout your settlements. These are the appointed festivals of the Lord, the holy convocations which you shall celebrate at the time appointed for them." And God then goes on. Passover, unleavened bread, festival of first fruits, festival of weeks. God is saying, I'm going to tell you now about my festivals, my holy convocations, holy get-togethers. Are you ready? The Sabbath is the weekly holy convocation. And then there are other holy convocations, Passover, unleavened bread, and the rest. The Sabbath is the original festival. Any day that you don't have to work is a good day that is supposed to be enjoyed. The Sabbath is a time set aside for a lot of things, a lot of different things. But as it is a weekly festival, one of those things has to be enjoying yourself. Many of us have inherited a church culture where fun and enjoyment are dirty words. It was not ever thus. There is provision in God's blueprint for humanity for God's church to have fun together. The Apostle Paul knew this, which is why he took time out of his hugely important, world-changing mission to celebrate a festival. Fun was a value for the Apostle Paul. And fun is a value for our church. In the midst of the different things that we seek to do, by design, there has to be time to enjoy ourselves. There is provision in God's blueprint for humanity for there to be fun on the Sabbath. The rest of the festivals that God subsequently went on to inaugurate are 7 days long, which means that one of those days has to be a Sabbath. And the Sabbath actually is a festival. That doesn't mean that everything has to be about fun, but it does mean that something has to be about fun. Because otherwise, the festival hasn't been celebrated properly. It hasn't been enjoyed. Some of the best memories that I have of Sabbath growing up were being in the forest and being in the park with people from church of all different ages having fun. Our church can seek to be inclusive and relevant and professional and all of the other values on our list. But if people don't enjoy being in our presence, there really isn't any point. Jesus always had people around him, from the young to the old, children and adults. I think he must have been fun to be around. I think he would like us to be fun to be around. I want to let you in on a secret. I was anxious about preparing the sermon on this value. From the very beginning of the series, I was thinking, how am I going to find something to share in the book of Acts about fun? But at the beginning of this week, as God has faithfully and consistently done every week throughout this series, at the beginning of the week, God led me to this particular passage and he showed me something. But weeks before God led me to this passage, and it's important I make this clear, weeks before God showed me what he wanted me to say, I felt God saying to me, you can't teach people about fun by preaching. You have to do something fun. People have to experience it. And so I would like to welcome you to the second phase of our devotion this morning, the Acts Church Sabbath Festival of Fun, because Sabbath is a festival and festivals are fun. And for those who are watching this back on our YouTube channel via the recording, we're going to sign off now and we're going to do something fun as a church family. And I encourage you, if you're watching this online, if you're watching on YouTube at a later stage, to also sign off and do something fun with your family too.